Hello and welcome to the AI Digest. My name is Joaquin Melara, and with me today is Joseph Mercieca.
Hello.
Joseph is a research and design specialist. He has a number of affiliations with design institutions, as well as a specialization in the area of accessibility.
Yeah.
With that, Joe, thank you for joining us. And
Welcome.
I'd love to hear a little bit about your background. What does it mean to be a research and design specialist?
Good question. So basically, being a research and design specialist, pretty much the goal is to ensure that, way to put it, that I deliver solutions that make sense to stakeholders as well as users by using a combination of research and design, well, skills and techniques, to put it frankly. And pretty much that's how I would summify that.
And you freelance under a company or the label called Another Concept.
Another concept, that's right. So yeah, so to put it frankly, I also do full-time work. So simultaneously, I'm building my little, well, let me call it empire or a project, to put it frankly, which is under the guise of Another Concept. Um, since I also focused on, concept design for an array of products stemming from software, at times hardware, web, mobile applications, novel utilities powered by machine learning, and so on. So this is a work in progress. So this is more like my little, my little baby project, to put it frankly. So least I can say for the time being is um, so yeah, so this is a work in progress. Yet at the same time, I also am working for another company for the time being, and we'll see how things go in the meanwhile. So I
And
mean, currently, way to put it. So I'm working on my website. So it might be live. I don't know when exactly. I mean, because I still have a lot to prepare and so on. So there is that.
originally you are from Malta, and
Yeah.
Malta is this place in the Mediterranean with lots of mixing, melting cultures, kind of just sharing the same space. I mean, you mentioned to me before we started recording that one of the electives for high school is learning a language, a third language, and
Yes. I mean, how to explain that? So the fascinating
Spanish,
thing.
French, Italian,
Yeah,
German.
yeah, yeah. So I will actually elaborate on that. So I mean, so basically, we are born bilingual. So we have two native languages, being Maltese and English. Now, the way the education system works is that once we enter high school, we have to pick a third language, and in progress also a fourth language. Now, in my case, I picked Italian and later German. Regretfully, I should have done the other way around because Italian was pretty much way too easy for me to learn. So there is that. So pretty much, I mean, people know between three to four languages, to put it frankly. Though, and if people are interested, they can also pursue other languages. So I remember at school we used to have Italian, French, German, Spanish, um, and then in time there was also the introduction of Chinese and Hungarian. So there is that.
So that kind of environment culturally breeds a lot of tolerance. It breeds a lot of awareness of different cultures, different customs, different foods. I mean, if you learn somebody's language, you kind of gain an appreciation for the perspective of the world, right?
I mean, there is that, yeah, but at the same time, because Malta happened to be at the bottom of the Mediterranean, so you can call it South Europe or North Africa because it's like it's like an intersection. So as a result, also stemming back to to ancient history, um, Malta was, how to say, visited or targeted by various nationalities. Now, be it colonization, such as from the UK prior to that, France, and so on. Then there was also, you know, I reckon, Arabic cultures. Then there was also the situation Malta versus Turkey. So there was that. So pretty much, I should have really revised history for this one. Um, there is a history of people coming and going, and what was remarkable about that is that then in time also the Knights of Rhodes got established in Malta, becoming the island of Knights, or the island of the Maltese Knights, or the Knights of Malta, to put it that way. So yeah, there's a lot of history and the interest. Well, the if I should put it that way, I mean, there is so much history that I don't even know every single bit. I mean, I studied history, but now pretty much I forgot some stuff. But pretty much there are things that it needs more the naked eye, to put it that way. So yeah, so that reminds me, maybe I should just brush my historical skills, maybe just relying back on some historical textbooks and so on. But yeah, and that pretty much gives us exposure to different cultures. Like I think what was also remarkable is that in time Malta became an gaming hub, and by gaming I'm talking about gambling and so on, which welcomed
That
companies
brings.
from the Nordics. So there is
Oh,
also that.
oh, interesting.
Yeah, and then it became also, how to say, it entered the realm of blockchain. So then again, it also helped countries like Azerbaijan, I believe, establishing their blockchain regulations. But this is an area I'm not quite well versed with. So there is also that.
Interesting. Well, the perspective that I wanted to paint was that in your neck of the woods, there's a lot of mixing cultures, and that kind of
Yeah,
has built your sensitivities for engaging with and integrating into different groups of cultures, because
yeah, exactly.
it's a very it's something that you have to sense. Naturally, there are different ways of thinking and different ways of working, and being able to read the room and acclimate to that is part of being a researcher and a designer, right? You have to empathize with the people that you work with and the people that you're working for, right? When you create a solution.
Absolutely. And to add further, so what happened is, I mean, pretty much I ended up into a journey without even planning for that. So to put it frankly, I mean, Malta as a small island, I mean, it has potential, but again, it also has its limitations. So I made the obvious choice of moving to the UK. Um, being a Commonwealth country, since Malta is also part of the Commonwealth and so on, and it's also an English-speaking country. So to me, it was a great start. So moving to the UK, I was lucky to join a US company with headquartered in the US, but with offices in the UK. It's a company that specializes in web optimization and analytics. So I spent a great deal of time working with US and US and British cultures in combination with additional cultures such as Italy, Eastern Europe, and so on. So I got exposed to that, and then also I ended up working on a multitude of projects, CRO-related projects for key market players like Qantas Airlines, McDonald's South Korea, HSBC Australia, and so on. Since I mentioned that was pretty much an eye opener for me when I worked for McDonald's South Korea. That was rather cumbersome because um, so we were supposed to come up with a project to to have improve conversions. But one thing that was different, well, to many of us is that in Asia, they when it comes to advertisement, they rely a lot on illustrations, on manga characters. So I had to understand how manga designs are used as part of the advertisement in certain territories. And I must say it was difficult. And this was also a wake-up call for me to understand how cultures work. And then what happened is Now, pretty much I had a few relocations due to extenuating circumstances. So eventually I touched Germany. And so I also worked with various cultures in Germany, also including from Middle East, Asia, and so on. Then I routed straight to the Nordics, touching Norway and Finland. Now, for example, with Norway, I began to learn about differences in the way they passive design, because there is also the thing they're called Scandinavian design, which was also a new thing. So they appreciate minimalism. Then in Finland, which was also remarkable, because in Finland everybody is obsessed with design maturity and service design, which was also a little bit of a new territory for me. But it was also a learning experience. At the same time, thanks to Finland, I also had more opportunities working and mingling with Eastern Europeans. And now, due to pretty much, we all follow the news, right? So pretty much due to various situations, just not to go into detail, at the moment I am situated in Ireland. Advantage, or to put it frankly, I mean, the key advantages are okay. English speaking, so that means no language barriers. And that's also something I had to deal with. And there are a lot of these, big US tech companies situated in Ireland. So pretty much, we're talking about the big tech, Microsoft, IBM, and so on. But yeah, so pretty much that journey exposed me to an array of situations, which were also how to put that, a lot of learning experiences. So I also ended up learning from mistakes, and now I decided, though I don't know when I'm gonna start it. I mean, to write a publication about that, maybe a book, maybe a mini book. I still have to figure that out, depending on the amount of material. So there is also that, and yeah, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, it's been a remarkable adventure. So nowadays I'm in a situation where I am more or less capable of saying, like, okay, there is this design, or there is this idea. Okay, this is not gonna work in Germany because of XYZ. This is not gonna work in the Nordics because of whatever reason that might be, and so on.
So that's amazing. I'm a little jealous that you've gotten to live many different mini lives and chapters by being able to traverse that European landscape. Um, yeah, um, I want to learn more about your perspective of your discipline, what it is that you do. Let's start by carving out product design, for example. That's something that you practice heavily with your consulting and with your career work.
Mhm.
What is product design?
So yeah, okay, that's an interesting question. So how should I define product design? So there's also a little bit of a cliche. So pretty much, as the name suggests, it's like um, designing products. Now, I don't mean to get nerdy into that. For starters, I'm not a big fan of the title, because so I'm also into music, and I had a bassist, and he's a product designer, but he designs kitchen appliances. And so there is that. So eventually, I also had a bit of an identity crisis. Like, okay, I began to say that this term product design is heavily used. So I began to use the title digital product design, because I focus on the digital realm predominantly. So coming down to the very definition, so I think, rather than defining product design, perhaps I'd rather combine that with things I do. So as a product designer, pretty much, or rather saying, product designers, what they do. So they deliver solutions that are useful that are perceived as useful to customers and users alike, so they can accomplish their goals. So pretty much we have to understand the use case, and to understand, when designing something, we must also understand what the stakeholders or the business want. So that means the business objectives, and the target audience who will be using the solution. Now, the solution could be, I don't know, software, mobile app, website, you name it. So what else I can add to that? So basically, it is also a fork of the discipline which we call human-computer interaction, which is computer science, and it is well stemmed within psychology, particularly some may argue to that, but okay, cognitive psychology, a bit about behaviorism, and Gestalt psychology. Now, in my case, I think I am a little bit more rooted into cognitive psychology because I believe that there is a key role here. Then at the same time, as a product designer, now probably I'm going to deviate a little bit from your question here because this is a rather, I must say, till nowadays, I mean, I got asked that question and I'm still not very good at answering that. As a product designer, I also get into research because it is the bread and butter for everything. Like I said before, if you don't understand the target audience, if you don't know about the market, then you cannot deliver quality to the audience. And what else can I add to that? Yeah, also a cultural understanding, but that probably is going to be my niche, given my travels and so on. So in this regard, as a designer, I must also account that the solution is well tailored for certain cultures, and at the same time, also to make sure to follow certain, well, which I would call best practices to that. For example, heuristic best practices or heuristic principles, and so on. But yeah, till nowadays, I mean, I cannot really tell what product design is, also because of the market landscape, because the term got redefined thanks to hiring managers, recruiters, and so on. So nowadays, if you go on the recruitment market, you have product design that is more strategic, more focused on defining experiences, and then you have product designers that are more focused on delivering the visual side of things, like, I don't know, the looks, the hedonistic aspect. So there is also a little bit of a confusion in between. So one title to 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 a certain extent focuses, to put it frankly.
I think and what you're saying here is a very common um, problem in the space of design at
Mhm.
large. I think product design being a subset of design, being a subset of human computer interactions,
Yeah.
is still such a broad area because
Yep.
there are a multitude of dimensions to work through. It's sometimes difficult to sort of pick out a uniform set of agreements on what it means to be a product designer. You have research, you have design, you have evaluation, you have prototyping, and then you have people that work on early stage products, mature products, expanding product lines. I mean, there's so many variations of this, and I guess it kind of depends on the context of the environment that you're in, the company that you're working for, and if it's a product or a service, right?
Exactly. So there is that, and then there are also these subspecialties. Now, again, probably the listeners might disagree a little bit here and there. So, for example, I mean, there are also specialized roles like service design, which is what I'm getting into nowadays, because I see service design to embrace a bigger holistic picture on a macro level, which takes into account not about the product, but who will be using the product and who will be operating the product and where it will be operated from. Just to give an example to that, once I worked on a project for a big hotel chain. Actually, I worked on a few projects on that regard, but we had a moment where we had to go to one of the hotels to explore the reception area, so to see where we can place the self-check-in utilities. Actually, these were present, but these were not visible enough, so we ended up ideating about where to place signs, how to add visibility, how to make it obvious for people that these are self-check-ins, and so on. So there is that. Then there is an interesting an interesting subdiscipline called interaction design. So they are heavily focused on the way we interact with a solution, be it physical or digital, including controllers, and also in the way the system responds to us. So there is a lot of thinking on that. Now, also, thanks to artificial intelligence, I also pretty much a lot of designers believe that there will be the rise of the AIX maybe or AI designers. So we have, okay, take product design, but specialized on
The
products powered by artificial
problem,
intelligence.
industry,
Yeah,
maturity.
yeah. And then we also have conversation design, which is, I mean, it existed before, but this will also gain more momentum in due process. So the thing with the definition is it keeps on changing as the technology matures, if I should put it that way, or it changes depending on new technologies in the industry.
What about accessibility? What does that mean?
Right. So, I mean, pretty much when it comes to accessibility, so how to explain that? So yeah, so basically accessibility per se it is focused on ensuring that digital and physical applications, solutions, such as, that includes premises and computerized items can be used by people with special needs. Now, I use the term special needs because I'm not a big fan of using the term disability because I find it to be rather stigmatizing. So we are talking about people with okay, with conditions like okay, with visible or invisible sort of disabilities, to put it that way, like visual, auditory, cognitive, motor, and so on. And to put it also that way, it also represents the mismatched human to systems interaction resulting in barriers simply because the solutions were not designed for everybody. So, you have a product, it's designed for a certain group of people, but not for everybody. So it also promotes the importance of taking other areas into consideration, such as demographics like culture, gender, and so on. So pretty much I'm also entering into the realm of inclusive design here. So that's how I would define it.
So there's some sort of characteristic that differentiates a person from what you would otherwise acknowledge to be someone with normal capabilities. Like they're like we have a certain level of statistical assumptions on what is the standard deviation of function in the brain and the body and the mind and all these different things. But there are people with extenuating genetic or circumstantial circumstances that make them require different levels of need, and being able to create a product that makes that product or service accessible is
Hmm.
part of that accessibility. If I can't see, I should be able to still engage with a banking application because it's a requirement for me to have a bank account and a credit card and pay my mortgage. If I'm deaf, I should also be able to engage in a similar realm, right? Like there's no those things should not bar me from living a full life where I have access to critical infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. So that is one way of seeing that. And the situation is, I mean, it is not easy to tackle for everybody. I'm gonna say that. Like for example, I mean, I had situations where I could cover a lot, but not everything. So there will always be limitations. I mean, we have this problem with standard products, for the average user, let alone for people with special needs. But since you brought this very matter up, now we have artificial intelligence, and a lot of us expect that this will deliver some sort of transformative experiences. Like it's interesting you brought it up because yesterday I was watching something like there was the eclipse recently, and I discovered that one of the most downloaded apps recently was an accessibility app that helps, I believe, people to monitor eclipse. I didn't read that through, but it made the news. But one thing that I stumbled upon is there is an application called, I believe, Be My Eyes. So what happens is there was a demo. There was a blind person. He opened the fridge, and the app on his phone, pretty much the app was screening the contents of the fridge, and it was telling the person exactly what's inside the fridge. So coming down to that, I believe that more needs will be addressed thanks to thanks to artificial intelligence. Then there are also concerns, cause for instance, now we have the introduction of robotics. I mean, take Figure One and Optimus. These will be helpful because these can act like assistants to people with special needs, like people having mobility issues. Though I also believe that there might be concerns because I said to myself, like, what if that robot fall on that person due to a malfunction? So there are also these potential limitations. I mean, chances are we will still. I mean, in the next probably 2 to 4 years, we might see more evolvement into that. So there are things that I'm still trying to get used to because this technology is also a little bit nascent. So there is also that. Now I'm not sure if I deviated from the topic. My bad.
Well, I think that is a sentiment that is shared by some people that are trying to grapple with the use cases. Right? The technology came on the scene, they made capabilities available, but that doesn't mean that the use cases have been fleshed out. And I think one other thing that people are looking at, not just computer vision, like you can drag images, and the application platform, whatever, can detect that there are entities in that image and tell you what it's about, give you a brief description. There are other people that are making language accessible. They take a snippet of a text on the bottle, say they're in France or they're in Italy, and they speak English or vice versa. You can take a picture of a can of soda.
Yeah,
It's a can of soda, not beer. I promise. Not at this time. Uh, but you could look at the contents of the soda and translate it across any multitude of languages. So that's another level of accessibility,
yeah,
language and cognition and things like that, right?
yeah. I mean, so for starters, I mean, now in my case, I can speak more about the digital realm because that's where I am more focused, uh, given my role. So yeah, so basically we have screen readers, and nowadays they come by default installed within the operating systems, be it Windows, Mac, and so on. Now, these screen readers, I mean, okay, I mean they function well, but they function so long, the web content is designed to be compatible with screen readers. For example, you mentioned language. Now, one thing about screen readers applied on website is if the language meta tag is not defined in the HTML code, to put it that way, let's assume you have a website in Spanish. What's going to happen is the screen reader will read Spanish with an English accent, and it might also pronounce some alphabets or names badly. Like, for example, okay, Joaquin, it might be like a Joaquin, perhaps. So there is that. But with artificial intelligence, that's going to be different. You don't need to go into that extreme to define everything. I mean, because considering that artificial intelligence is a trained, okay, it is trained to put it that way on large language models, plenty of data sets, and so on. It will make things easier for us, or sorry, how to say, it will make things easier to interpret content, and that also comes down to imagery. Like again, let's go back to the World Wide Web. Like you have an image and you have to define, okay, the alt attribute, which is pretty much tailored for screen readers. It's also good best practice. Sorry, it's also best practice, good, but so on. You also might have to add a title and so on. So pretty much this is about describing the image. Now, thanks to image recognition, coupled with a screen reader not only don't have to go to certain extremes to describe the image, but because artificial intelligence is trained to understand, it can provide a better description of the image to the individual. So there is also that. So yeah.
So let's talk about the methodologies that are used when you create a product. I mean, right now we're kind of talking in a very generic way, but I think it's important to lay the broader context before we can dive into your experience with AI and technologies like that.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. When it comes to AI, don't want to say that I'm experienced. I mean, pretty much, I'm also learning because this is also very new. This is also a very new thing. The benefit that I have is that I was lucky to work on a machine learning recommendation solution um, for one company, and then I was also lucky to write a research paper about how people trust and accept chatbot technology. So I had that exposure from an academic standpoint, but that happened years ago, and things like definitions like generative AI were not even a thing back then. So there is that. Now coming down to methodologies, design methodologies. I mean, there are quite a few. Now, of course, there are methods that we design practitioners follow, but although some of us desire to follow these wholeheartedly, it doesn't mean that we follow everything by the book or by every single bit, simply because um, the way I see that is that we have to be pragmatic and sensible to the situation. Like, for example, let's say that there are, I don't know, that there are 10, okay, this is for the sake of the argument, there are 10 things we must do. Now, if we have a tight deadline, if the resources are limited, if we don't have a lot of people in the team, then of course we might need to omit some processes out. Then of course it depends on the project, because one method, if I should put it that way, could work for one thing, for one project or for one particular use case, but not for another. Now, since you brought methodologies up, pretty much, a lot of us follow the classical user-centered design, which is broken down into into basic steps, including research, um, establishing requirements stemming for business requirements or stakeholder requirements and user requirements, concept design, iteration, evaluation, launching, and monitoring. Okay, pretty much I went a little bit more into detail to that. But pretty much this is more on a light scale level, because pretty much, iteration and testing, this could happen on a multitude of occasions depending on the scale of the project. Then there are also a couple of frameworks that pretty much I like following. One which is the pretty much probably everybody knows about that, the jobs to be done framework, and the double diamond method framework, to put it that way. So that is that.
Well, I think you made a very important point in that description of the methodologies and different ways of approaching this discipline. In particular, you said that you might have this inclination to follow a process from step number 1 to step number 10, but what really dictates how pure you can employ a methodology is based in the real world constraints. Is there enough money? Is
Exactly,
there enough time?
exactly,
Is there enough
exactly.
trained staff to execute?
Yes, exactly. And I can give an example to that. Now, what I'm gonna say, it's not the best of all examples, so I hope it's not gonna turn against me. So, I was with one company that was back in Germany, and it's an e-commerce company, and so they run a few platforms online, and they are successful. I mean, they are nationally known, like across Germany. So they have one about books and media. Pretty much I was responsible for the second-hand garments. And the stakeholders wanted a native mobile app uh, for the, similar, pretty much imagine the e-commerce web encapsulated in a native mobile app. Great stuff. Now, what happened is that the requirement came in during the last week of November, and we had pretty much about 1 month. Okay, the deadline was about the first week of January. Now, I mentioned November, so that is December, and that means Christmas holidays, vacations, people going on leave, and so on. So pretty much we had about 4 weeks to come up with a concept while working in collaboration with one iOS developer and one Android developer. So to make sure that we follow the standards by Apple and Android. So just to so fast forward to that, you know, in the ideal world, we have to test the concept among a pool of participants. Now, we didn't have time for that, and because we finished the concepts, like this set of UI designs and so on before Christmas, and we didn't have resources and time for that. So we had to, extreme situations call for extreme measures, to put it that way. So what I did was, I assessed the company, and pretty much, so I was working with another designer. So pretty much we assessed, we evaluated the concepts among colleagues who are the least exposed to the websites, products, and so on. So pretty much HR, and to a certain extent, a few people from customer care and other departments. Now, of course, I might admit there will be bias and so on. True, but better having a bit of feedback, even if it's a half-baked feedback, than not having anything at all. So, the situation called for, pretty much we had to adapt to the situation in order to meet the target.
I think that's a common misconception that some people who get out of academic scenarios, or maybe they come from boot camps, or maybe they come from college, or whatever, they might be early in their career, even if they work in a very mature organization with lots of resources. When they go into the real world and work in imperfect conditions, that's when they have to break away from that analysis paralysis. Like, how do we make the perfect experiment? How do we make the perfect scenario to make sure that we know exactly what's going in the market? You're never going to fully know. You're never going to really fully know for sure what's happening or where it's going or how are you doing, unless you continuously monitor with the tools that are ready in front of you, right?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, so okay,
something
tool.
today Something today is better than creating something that you think is perfect, even by the end of the week, but you always have to get some sort of feedback. Are we in the right direction? Yes or no? If yes, let's keep going this way. If not, what exactly are the options that we consider to be our potential pivot areas, right?
Yeah, exactly. And just to come up with a scenario, which also happens, well, which at times happens, I must say. So okay, so that is one approach. Now this is okay. So a lot might disagree with that, but then at the same time, it is not new. So you either just launch something half baked, and then you let the solution get mature as it confronts competing products, because at times you can learn that way. Now, again, this is not my favorite approach, but if resources are limited, you can only do so much. And then you also have people who don't really appreciate the research side when it comes to design, because stakeholders think mainly visual nowadays. Yeah, so there is that. And then secondly, I mean, because this is a little bit of a side note. COVID also changed a little bit in the way we evaluate solutions. So nowadays we can also run, you know, remote usability evaluation by, by hiring people remotely. So there is also that. But other than that, I mean, there are also analytics. You can also run A/B tests, something that I do on a daily basis nowadays. So currently I work hand in hand with one person who is entirely focused on A/B testing. Now, of course, a lot of the answers would be hypothetical. Like, yes, it turned out that green button works better than the red button. So we know the what. So we know that green button works, but we will never know the why until we speak to the people. But so that is also so there are also these tools that can help us make informed decisions, depending on how you use them, of course. Because when it comes to okay, there is, I think, in computing, garbage in equates to garbage out, if that makes sense.
I think no, you're fully right. You bring up another good point. You're just bringing up a series of good points, but a lot of people make the false assumption that design is something based on feelings. I think the word that you used was what was the word that you used for the aesthetic aspects?
Hedonism.
Hedonism. So some people think that it's a hedonistic pursuit of oh, it looks beautiful. Oh, this is lovely. Oh, I feel good that this is in fashion. But really, I mean, a lot of the work that is done by designers falls in the domain of statistical statistical analysis. You're collecting quantitative figures because you need to validate, is this product going in the right direction or not, with the usage, with the adoption, with the churning of new users, or you're looking at the qualitative components. You said you can look at the aggregate from surveys, but you're not really going to know until you ask, hey man, what do you think about the product? Hey, miss, ma'am, lady, sir, what do you think about the product? And then when they give you their perspective, that's when you have a holistic view as to what people think about that thing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's also one thing I keep on emphasizing to. This is a bit of a deja vu because I keep on doing that. I mean, I did that last week, I believe. About the importance of, I mean, okay, I'm in an environment that is driven at the moment by SEO and so on, just to achieve the best of all the best in the ranks and so on, because that's what brings money. And I must say they're also right, because if there is no money, then that means salaries are not paid and so on. So, that's why balance is important. But I've been also pushing on the agenda that at some point it will be good to get proper user feedback. So now the good thing about our domain is that it's heavily qualitative driven. But so pretty much, I mean, well, how to put that? I mean, all designers will definitely agree on that. But it's also good to focus on the digits, on the numbers, on the quantitative side of things. Um, so there is also that. Now, coming down to stakeholders, that's a very good one because, and this is where design maturity comes in, which is the ultimate goal for for designers. Because if I'm in a design mature company, I don't have to tell people what is right, what is wrong, and people in a design mature company appreciate everything within the realm of design and research. Now, you mentioned about visuals and so on, but unfortunately, the part about visuals is that beauty lies in the eye of the beholder. What is beautiful to you may not be beautiful to others. There is also the cultural elements. Take recently WhatsApp. I mean, WhatsApp, they had this greeny, whitish, yada yada app. Now they stripped everything. There is minimal color. It's all white with outlines. So they are embracing simplicity, and this is also a new trend. I mean, think about Perplexity, for example, the browser. I mean, it's all super duper basic. So we have trends, and trends also influence design. We also have culture. Like one thing I could say is this is something I learned in the past. So I was interviewing for one company with a heavy presence in India. So it was an agricultural company, and this was also another eye opener. So it turned out that, for example, that was at least back then. Maybe things changed, but if the UI, it's not, if it is not colorful and vibrant enough, it may be perceived as a not good product, not a good product at all. Now, if that trend has changed, I don't know. So, because this happened back in 2016, I believe, and that's the thing. Trends keep changing. I mean, let's talk about skeuomorphism, which is kind of like a pseudo real UI, with components almost looking real, and that is heavily applied in the music tech. Um, so that's also one niche. But the thing is that also in the realm of music technology, that is changing. So companies are going into a more flat design, and that's the thing. Coming down to the very visual, it can work with one culture, but it may not work with another culture, and this is something I keep on experiencing. So hence, at least in the company I'm working with, we are dealing. Okay, we do a lot of localization, so we have a version for the Nordics, a version for the UK, a version for Germany, and so on. And that's where localization comes in handy, at least for the World Wide Web, because when it comes to software, that would be a little bit different. Um, but yeah, design, okay, the hedonistic aspect is subjective by opinion, because like I said, what is beautiful to you is not beautiful to others. And then there is the cultural element to that. So I cannot say that this is a good answer, but this is also something I am still trying to understand, because much as people focus on visual, and then there is also one thing. This is something I keep on experiencing. Like I'm gonna give an example. Well, I'm gonna spill the beans on myself. Like that happened in Norway. Like I had an interview, and I got told that that I'm not a good designer. So that was a feedback by a recruiter. So I asked, like, okay, and what makes me not a good designer? And the feedback was because part of my entries were are entries from the year 2015 or 16. So they were making reference to one large scale project that I worked on. And then they said that I should work in a realm that requires less visual design, like software. And I was like, excuse me, I mean, software also needs visuals, let alone
Depends.
anything else.
Everything's context dependent, but that makes sense.
Exactly,
I mean,
exactly.
different cultures appreciate different aesthetics, different things, minimalism, maximalism.
Yeah,
But at the end of the day, these are preferences that don't impair the function. What impairs what makes something solve the problem that it has is a matter of scientific investigation, right?
yes, exactly, exactly. And unfortunately, not everybody can see that unless you work in a scientific driven company, put it that way, like big conglomerates or companies with a high design maturity. Um, but that's the world we are living in, and I can also see that affecting the job market. Like when I go on LinkedIn, when I read posts and so on, even when I read job specs, um, often they focus more on the visual element. Now, of course, I cannot quite blame the hiring companies, because maybe because they have to save budgets, so that means they want to hire somebody who can do everything, or maybe they just have a different perception to what design stands for. Hence, a job spec from one company may be different from the other one, and that's also why I'm not sure if I mentioned that in our in at the beginning of our talk. And I'm thinking of releasing one post about that. Now, pretty much, I'm gonna give a spoiler alert. Um, I think we must come to the point where we must come with two titles: product experience design, that is more focused on strategy and so on, and product visual design, that is more focused on the hedonistic aspects of the role. So at least that will create a healthy segregation and clarity. So at least also people like me, okay, so I say, okay, they need somebody who is more visual, awesome, good for them. So at least I know how they perceive and value designs. Okay, so they are more into the hedonistic world. that might not be for me because I'm more on the strategic element. Because I must make sure that I mean my core focus is usefulness. I must make sure that when you use the product, you achieve your goals. You fulfill your tasks. I mean, there is a classical example. Like I mean, look back in the I'm gonna use a word in the ancient times back to the flight booking systems. Now the structure, I mean, there was a structure. I mean, visually not the most appealing of all things, but you could uh, get the job done, like booking a flight. So the goal has been accomplished. And I know one researcher, I keep forgetting his name, but I love his paper. He said one thing. This happened back when everything was about mobile apps. So he said, like the app market is cluttered with a lot of beautifully designed applications, good when it comes to user experience, but when it comes to usefulness, poor. Simple as that. So I hope that answers the question. I mean, so I tend to pretty much. I mean, when your questions at times they open more doors, and I keep on passing all the doors. And that I must also mention that. Okay, I must also mention that, and so on.
No, it's fair game, man. I'm here to hear you talk about what your perspective is. Yeah, I guess we just have to make a design more accessible. We have to make accessibility accessible, right? It's a meta joke. Uh,
Yeah, and I mean, good that you brought it up. I mean, because now, when it comes to accessibility, this also comes down culturally, like within the organization. This is not about a product team trying to tick the boxes to make sure that we are compliant. I mean, there is that part, but this also involves into making sure that the solution is not accessible in terms of checking boxes, but also in terms of testing that with, doing accessibility testing, like testing the product, the solution with people with special needs. Now, like I said, this also comes down to on an organizational cultural level. And, I mentioned design maturity. Um, I also think, and this is going to be a little bit of a new thing, so probably this is a new term. I think we must also strive for accessibility maturity alongside design maturity. And I also took notes on that, so I have to, because I also had to write it down, like what accessibility maturity stands for. So I need to find it out. So basically, the way I could explain accessibility maturity, because this is also I'm also writing something about that, which I intended to release at some point soon. So bear with me, yeah. I read a lot of research papers, unfortunately. That's one of my ugly habits, and I get lost into papers. But I also reserved that one in case you bring it up today. So I was looking forward for that. So basically, I'm gonna start by defining design maturity. Problem with me is I forget a lot. I'm also getting old. So design maturity by the book refers to the level of sophistication, effectiveness, and integration of design practices, which is great, within an organization, coupled with the organization's ability to leverage design thinking, user-centered processes, and various methodologies to create amazing experiences in the products and services. So pretty much this is about companies valuing design, research, anything within the realm of human computer interaction design, the way I put it, from a strategic level. And also, I mean, rather than having companies focusing on the hedonistic aspect. Okay, I'm gonna sound like a broken record here. So synonymous to design thinking, or sorry, design maturity, accessibility maturity, the way I envision it is that it employs the same elements from design maturity with the added bonus of including an accessibility first process in conjunction with the user centered process. And I'm bringing that up because if you want to be super compliant, You must design, okay, people must design solutions with accessibility in mind. And this also comes down, well, probably I'm not going to say it in the right way. This also includes the way we code applications. Because, for example, if we want, say, a website or a software as a service operated via a browser, if we want it to be compatible with basic assistive technologies like keyboards and screen reader, we also have to inject that, inject some attributes in the coding. This is known as the ARIA. I'm not good with abbreviations, by the way, but you can also Google ARIA, ARIA. You can find something on w3.org. So there is that. So yeah, so accessibility maturity. So if it's not in the market, you heard it first here, okay?
I think it's also a matter of resources, right? I mean, accessibility is something that requires some sort of specialized knowledge or training. You know,
Yeah,
it's not always accessible because people are looking to develop profit generating ideas or working on their services, and until they reach a certain size or revenue or some sort of threshold, the government doesn't really force them to comply to some sort of unified standard.
that is going to change. That is actually changing. So first and foremost, I cannot speak much about the US because I only know so much. But so basically, there is a website called section508.gov. So there are regulations over there. There is the Disability Act from 1995, I believe. Um, and these regulations are nowadays being nicely, I don't want to use the word enforced, but they're being pushed. Now, speaking of enforcement, however, and good that you brought it up. I mean, now there are the European regulations. So basically, in Europe, big companies have deadlines. Okay, they must achieve a certain degree of compliance by June, I believe June the 28th, 2025. So pretty much in 1 year time. Otherwise, there will be fines. Now, just to spill all the beans, companies with less than 10 people, they are exempted. So no, I mean compliances will be gradually. Okay, what's the right word? I don't really want to sound rough. I don't really want to use the word imposed, but okay,
Yeah, of course, of
promoted.
course.
Okay,
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I think if you're bringing up design maturity, little by little, people will start seeing that once this compliance takes hold, open source technologies or things that people already are using will come up with newer, better ways of adhering to that compliance proactively. Because that is what tends to happen, right? There's some high level, top bottom approach where somebody says either you do this or refine you, and then suddenly everybody gets creative, and they manage a way to like adopt or fix a certain level of problems immediately because they want to avoid the punishment.
yeah. Now, I mean, I was gonna say something, but maybe I should not. I mean, for ethical reasons, this has to do with previous roles. So first and foremost, I mean, I had moments where I also delivered presentations to stakeholders about accessibility. Now there were moments where I pretty much got told that we will only account for okay, about 3 to 5% of our user base. Now I don't know where they brought up the 3 to 5% from, but that's an assumption. Um, so my argument to that is that these numbers will keep on increasing. Now coming down to, but this is applicable to public companies like cooperatives and so on. There are also governing bodies within the states or country or city and so on. So these also act like watchdogs, and people can also file complaints. I mean, like I remember there was, I don't remember which flight company in Europe, but somebody filed a complaint, and the company got sued for because their website was not accessibility friendly enough. So I think we are living in a period where things are being refined, um, maybe re-established, that would be the right term, or maybe even redefined. And because also what's happening is, So we have new technologies coming in, but now okay, probably I'm gonna sound a little bit more European here. So there is the push of the AI compliance, in terms of privacy, ethics, and so on. Simultaneously, there is accessibility. So I think we are entering in a period of best practices and regulations, but I might be wrong here. And I also suspect that AI will play some sort of contribution, but again, I can be wrong. So I might not really have the best answer to that, but at least I can say is that priority on accessibility is increasing gradually. Because also one thing I must not forget is actually two things. So I did my master's, and the good thing is that we had a module about accessibility, and pretty much everybody came out accessibility minded. And I also noticed a few colleagues, they became accessibility specialists in their field. Like one colleague, he ended up writing a lot of quality papers about aphasia, something I ended up learning from him. Um, so I think chances are maybe it comes down to the interest of the designer, or perhaps also it comes down to the quality of training. Chances are that designers nowadays, they will start gradually pushing on the importance of accessibility. Plus there is also the International Association of Accessibility Professionals, IAAP. So they are also playing a part in that. And that reminds me, I have to sit for my certification one day. So yeah.
Interesting stuff, Joe. I think you're right. I think AI will enable the adoption of these best practices.
Hopefully.
Uh, like we spoke about earlier, computer vision and LLMs and things like that that can translate languages on your behalf was otherwise unheard of or unthinkable maybe 3 years ago, where you had to have somebody at least understand the language or both languages to be able to decipher something. Now you have a program that automatically you take a picture and you get from one language to another in seemingly okay context switching between different grammar structures. So
Yes, there is that. But again, I mean, I love following the news. I'm also a little bit into geopolitics and so on. Well, not a little bit, actually, a lot. I'm going to admit that now. But what I find fascinating is people are okay. The good companies are doing some amazing stuff. So stuff beyond my level of creativity. So that said, maybe new utilities, new tools, sorry, new assistive tools will come in. Just to give a basic example, do you know the walking sticks, for blind people? Now
yeah,
imagine these equipped with a voice utility, like, okay, you're gonna hit the pavement, you're gonna hit this.
be my eyes,
Yeah,
but yeah.
yeah. I don't know how they're called exactly. My bad. I'm not really the best at
No,
remembering
you
titles.
mentioned you mentioned the application on your phone that was used for the
Yeah,
eclipse.
yeah.
But
That is
be
something.
my eyes equipped on your walking stick.
Okay, that's a good idea. Yeah, I didn't think of that. But yeah, I mean, since you mentioned that, yeah, I mean, I think it's called Be My Eyes. You can go on YouTube, also for the listeners. They can go on YouTube and find that out.
Well, Joe, thank you very much for sharing a little bit about your thoughts on culture and your expertise in accessibility. Where can people find you, and what exactly who would be the best
Okay,
person to reach out to you?
right. So I would say, so okay. So first and foremost, I mean, thanks for this opportunity to be on Swarm and the AI Digest podcast. So thanks a lot for that. Now, with regards to reachability, I'd say LinkedIn. Um, Otherwise, go on anotherconcept.net, one word, anotherconcept.net. You're going to find a holding page, but there is a link to my LinkedIn, and you can find me there for the time being. So, yeah,
Wonderful. We'll put that in the promotions of the episode and make it easy for people to find you.
I appreciate that. Awesome stuff.
Thank you, Joe.
Thanks.